Good day. Today we are going to be looking at Module 1.5, System Software and Computer Management. All right, so let's jump to there and let's get started. We're going to be going through the introduction. We're going to be looking at operating systems, the role of operating systems. We're going to look at the task manager, single user versus multi-user operating systems. We're going to be looking at operating system utilities, such as file management, scheduling, your printer management, and backups. And then we're going to move on to security tools, such as access control, firewall, and your general security. And then factors that influence performance, which is your RAM, random access memory, your CPU, your central processing unit, and your two different types of hard drives that you get, your mechanical hard drive and your solid state drives, and the influence of malware. And then we're going to finish off with troubleshooting using utility software. All right, let's jump straight into this. As end users, we spend most of our time using application software. It is, however, important to realize and understand the crucial role that system software plays in the management and maintenance of a computer. System software is software that is intended to control, support, or operate a computer. This includes operating systems like OS X, so that's OS 10, operating system 10, Linux, and Windows. Right, those are the most popular ones. Others is iOS, which is your Apple. It also makes use of utility software, such as antivirus software and programs that back up your data. In this module, we will mainly look at system software, but also at some factors that influence the performance of our computers. All right, first we're going to look at our operating systems. On the right-hand side, it says, remember that computing devices such as tablets and smartphones also have operating systems such as iOS and Android. All right. And on the Nokia smart devices, they are run with Windows. Right, just a little bit of extra info there. Right, operating systems. The operating system is system software that controls all activities that take place in a computer. It is sometimes referred to as a software platform, as it controls and supports all other software and hardware on the computer. When a computer is switched on, the operating system must first be loaded to control all the activities. So basically, without an operating system, regardless of whichever one you're using and on whichever device you're using it, you must have an operating system in place and loaded before the time for all the other apps to be able to function. Right, what happens when a computer is switched on? Computers only follow instructions. So when they're switched on, the first thing they do is look for instructions to follow. These instructions are stored on special memory chips called ROM. So that's read only memory. They keep their contents even when the computer is off. So that is known as a non-volatile device. A volatile device is RAM, your random access memory, which loses all of its stored information when the electricity to it is cut off. All right, when you switch the computer on, these instructions perform some basic hardware tests to ensure everything is working correctly. So if there is a problem, you might land up with something like a blue screen. That is typically a problem with your hardware. It could also be a software issue. Try to find and load the operating system from the disk drive it has been told to check. So that is why there is generally a partition for your operating system that your ROM will go to and go and have a look for that. Right, once the operating system has been found, it is loaded into memory and the control of the computer is then handed over to the operating system. This process of loading the operating system is called booting the computer. So again, depending on the version of Windows that you have, the amount of RAM that you have that we'll have a look at later on, your CPU, your boot up time, your start time may vary. All right, let's have a look at the role of the operating system. So once the operating once the operating system is loaded, the user can interact with or use the computer. The functions of an operating system are the following: providing the user interface. So everything that we see on the screen, okay, is the user interface. Operating systems allow us to interact with the computer via a graphical user interface, or a GUI, pronounced a GUI. This interface is graphically presented by using small pictures called icons and other visual aids, such as menus and buttons, which make it easy for us to understand and use the computer. So all those little file icons and Word and Excel icons and little thumbnails of your images and your videos that you've taken, that's what they're talking about over there, including your menu when you go to start menu, as well as all your icons that may appear on your taskbar, and even your date and time on the right hand side is all possible through your graphical user interface. Right, managing programs. The operating system allows the user to choose and run software by loading programs into memory and coordinating the processing of these programs with the CPU. For example, it manages which programs and tasks can use the CPU and for how long. So basically what is happening is when you have multiple um, applications open, the more of your CPU is being used, and time with that CPU needs to be allocated. And we'll discuss later how that happens. All right. So just to give you an example over here, I'm going to bring this across. In the middle of the screen over here, you can see that I'm currently using 73% of my RAM and about 50% of my CPU. You can see that it's constantly jumping around because of all the applications that are happening in the background over there. All right. So over here, there's a joke, or maybe a fact, you decide, that says men cannot multitask or do more than one thing at a time. Operating systems are completely the opposite. They can multitask quite effectively. Right, so the whole purpose of computers is to be able to do functions at a fraction of the speed that it would take us to do. If you think about a complex formula that you've created in Excel and you hit the enter button, in a fraction of a second, the answer for that is there, right? A lot faster than what we can do it. So even if men can't multitask, okay, maybe some women too, computers can definitely do it, and they can do it at a much faster speed than what we can. Every operating system runs several tasks or processes seemingly at the same time. So that means without errors and things like that. So simultaneously. These processes or tasks include the operating system itself. So that's always running in the background so that the other applications can work, as well as the programs that you are running. For example, Word to type an essay, or Spotify or Apple Music to listen to music at the same time. There are also other tasks or processes that are in memory, such as the antivirus processes. A multitasking operating system ensures that each process or task is allocated resources such as memory and CPU time fairly so that all programs perform at their best. The operating system allocates resources for each task so quickly that it seems as though the tasks happen at the same time. Multitasking is therefore the ability of the operating system to load and process multiple tasks or processes at the same time. So I showed you my CPU and my RAM just now. So the more applications I open up on my desktop, eventually it's going to slow down to the point that it can almost stop, or my entire system can freeze because it cannot handle the load anymore. Right, so that's called lagging. It'll start to lag, it'll slow down, and it'll take a while for the things to happen, the instructions that you give it. And the instructions, you give instructions through interacting with the screen, either using your mouse or your keyboard. All right. Each tab you open in your web browser is treated as a separate process. Right. So if I have to open up 10 tabs over here and I go back and I have a look at my RAM and my CPU, I will notice a distinctive increase in usage, and it may take longer for my browsers to open up and to load my pages as a result. So again, um, always check the amount of RAM that you have and the type of CPU that you have, and be cautious of opening up too many things because it will slow your system down. All right, managing hardware, disk management. The operating system manages how the data is organized on the storage device and how and when programs access the storage device. The operating system saves us from having to know how to physically load and save files on different types of disks. We just click save with the options we want, and the operating system does the rest. So that's made it a lot easier. Back when computers were still relatively new, you used to have what they called MS-DOS. So you used to have to type every instruction in, and the graphical interface, user interface, was not as sophisticated and as easy to use as it is nowadays. All right, memory management. The operating system controls how the program uses the memory, the RAM. Again, random access memory. For example, it ensures that different programs don't try to use the same area of memory at the same time and so corrupt each other's data and instructions. So if I have, let's take for instance, their example, I have a Word document open and I'm busy typing out an essay or a letter, and I've got my music open or a media player of some sort. The operating system is able to multitask so efficiently and move little bits of information through the memory to the CPU and back again at different times. So at one point, it'll send through information from the media player, then it'll send information through from the Word document that we type in, then it'll have some instructions from the operating system. And all of this is happening so quickly that it looks like it's all happening at once. And this is happening in milliseconds. So it separates everything and it sends through what they call packets of information through the CPU so that it can process that and send back an instruction, and then you see the result on your screen. Again, for example, creating a formula in Excel, what it will do is the minute you hit enter, it will look at Excel, it'll have a look at its instructions and how to do that formula and the order in which to do them. That information is then sent through the memory, the RAM, to the CPU to be calculated and things like that. And the CPU also sends back the instruction, display the answer, and that gets sent back through the memory and gets displayed on your screen in milliseconds. All right, so there's an example of your memory management over there. Right, your input output management. The operating system manages the input and output of the computer and how programs use the input and output devices. For example, which programs receive input from input devices and which programs can use an output device at any time. Okay, so examples of input devices is your mouse, your keyboard, um, your microphone, your camera, your gaming device, your gaming console, a gaming stick. Those are all examples of input. Output could be audio or it could be visual. And depending on the type of software that you have, it could also, let's say, for instance, for the visually impaired, it could vibrate um, to alert them to the output that has been processed. Alrighty, so that's a couple examples of your input and your output over there. All right, providing basic security. The operating system provides basic security functions such as user and access control through passwords, fingerprint recognition, or facial recognition. So on most desktops, you'll either have a password or a PIN or a pattern that you'll um, input to be able to gain access. The same on most smart devices, such as phones and tablets. Some of them also have fingerprint readers built into them, and devices such as your iPhones have facial recognition included in them as well that you can make use of. So this is just a couple examples of some basic protection. Right. You can also provide basic protection against threats to our computers, but these are often best handled by other utility programs, system software. These programs will be examined in more detail later in the module. Right, so we're going to be looking at things such as malware software, firewalls, and the likes. Okay, so the two ways in which your operating system provides basic security is by restricting access unless you have the right credentials, either through a PIN, fingerprint recognition, facial recognition, passwords, and the like. And then there's other software that it makes use of to protect your device as well. The task manager. A task manager in Windows operating system can be accessed by right-clicking on the taskbar at the bottom of the screen or by using Control-Alt-Delete keyboard shortcut. The task manager provides some information about the computer's performance and the applications and processes running. It is most often used to terminate a process or program that is not responding. So sometimes you'll get an application. Let's take Word, for example. It'll say at the top of the screen that Word is not responding at the moment. You can open up your task manager, click on Word, and then click on End Task, and it will close it down for you. So just to give you an example on the taskbar, for which right click on it over here, I can come to my task manager over there and open it up. Now, I'm not going to do this at the moment because my computer is a bit on the slow side. Sorry about that. Let me just quickly get back to where I was. All right. Oh, yeah. All right, the task manager. Then moving on to single user versus multi-user operating systems. So your home desktop or your laptop, your phone, your tablet, those are single user devices. And we're going to look at the difference between the single user and multi-user operating systems. So most operating systems, including the Windows series of operating systems, allow more than one person to log onto a computer using different usernames or accounts. It is in fact recommended that you have one account that has administrative rights to allow you to change settings on your computer and another standard account with fewer rights for your everyday work. This is done so that if a virus or other malware attacks your computer, its effects are limited as opposed to when you are logged onto the computer with full administrator rights. Right, so they say that that's a good idea, but most of us don't generally do that. If it's only us using the computer, we generally just create an account for ourselves with full administrator rights. So they say that it's better to have a secondary account for that to mitigate some of your risks. Let's have a look at the difference between the single user and multi-user operating systems. The normal Windows operating system that comes installed on your computer allows you to switch between users and still remain logged on. However, the reality is that only one user can use the computer at a time. This is why it's called a single user operating system. So even though you can have multiple accounts, you can still only access one at a time. It's the same as having multiple email addresses. You can only access one email account at a time and read through those emails before switching to the next one. Multi-user operating systems. This refers to operating systems designed to have multiple users accessing the same computer at any time. These types of operating systems are usually installed on servers and used in networks where multiple users need to have simultaneous access to the computer. For example, the whole class downloading a file shared by your teacher on the network, or even multiple users around the world downloading the same web page at once. Examples of multi-user operating systems include Linux and the various server editions of Windows. I'll give you another example of a multi-user operating system. You go to the store and you go and purchase all your groceries. You get to the till and they scan them through. You pay and you go. So every time one of the products that you are purchasing is scanned, that till or that device is accessing the central server, the central computer where all the other tools and computers are connected to, and it's returning a price for you. Now we can have multiple tools accessing that same server at the same time, as well as the back office being able to access it either to check stock quantities, do stock take, do price changes, whatever they need to do in the background, simultaneously to the tools accessing them. Right, so there's just an example of an everyday example where a multi-user operating system is in place. So it's not that every tool has its own database. It accesses a central database, all of them at once. All right. Operating system utilities. Utilities are programs that perform system maintenance and administrative tasks. Several types of utilities are included with the operating system. These can usually be accessed via the start menu and include programs such as the file manager, the disk defragmenter, and disk cleanup. So let's see if we can find that quickly over here. So start, and let's have a look through here. Should be under, let's have a look, Microsoft Office Tools. No, that's not that one. Let's go have a look under Utilities. Let's see if it's maybe there. Yeah, we got Windows Accessories. So there's Windows Accessories. We've got a character map, Internet Explorer, Math Input, Notepad, Paint. Okay, so that's Accessories. Here's Administrative Tools that we can use. Component services, computer management, defrag and optimize, disk cleanup, and a whole lot more over here that's available. All right. Then we also have ease of access options available in our Windows. And yeah, that's basically that over there. Okay. So that's where you will find that under your Windows administrative tools. Yeah. Right. Moving on to file management. All operating systems provide us with a filing system and tools for managing our files, such as File Explorer in Windows. On the right here, they say the file manager, Windows Explorer, is now called File Explorer. Where will we find that? Generally, that is by default on our task manager over here. This is our File Explorer. We click on that. We just give it a moment to open up. Come on. Okay, let's drag this across. I can see all my recently accessed things, and I can see my desktop, my documents, my downloads, my music, my pictures, videos, my C drive, my external that I've got in there, and my network. All right. So that is what your File Explorer is, can be used for. That is for quick, easy access to your different files and that you have created, files and folders that you have created. Right. So let's have a look at some of the naming files. So file names in the Windows operating system consist of two parts, namely the file name, which is followed by a period or full stop, and a 3 to 5 letter file extension. So Excel is XSLX. The newer version of Word is .docx. Um, PowerPoint is .pptx. So just to give you an example over there. Other examples is for images, you got .jpg, .png, .gif. For music, you can have .wave, WAV, .mp3, .mp4. For video, you can also have MP4, dot AVI, .mkv. So just to give you a couple ideas, there are many different types of extensions. And the extensions help us to recognize the file that we've got over there, as well as the icons that we generally see next to them as well. All right. File extensions and file types. The file extension identifies the file type or format and is automatically added by the program when you save the file. So this file type, the file extensions, basically tells the operating system what type of application, what type of file this is, and what type of application would be able to open it. All right. Um, the file extension identifies the file type and or format and is automatically added by the program when you save the file. Examples are data.accdb, so that's access, or budget.xlsx, that's Excel, that is your Office 365 version, and Office 2019. I think it's 2016 onwards is putting in the X at the end. The file extension also determines which program will open the type of file by default when you double click on it. If Windows encounters a file type that it does not recognize, it will give you a list of suggested programs to try and open the file with, or it will allow you to search the internet to find a suitable program to open the file. You can also change or set the default programs used to open particular types of files. So let's quickly minimize over here and let's come to um, let's take my series and my movies. Right. Let's quickly open that up and let's just randomly pick one and we just wait for the menu to open. Okay, and I can go to the open with as soon as it decides to give me that option. And you can see over here that I have different options in which to open up this video, and I can choose on the search on the Microsoft Store if I don't find a suitable one over there, or I can choose another app over there. All right, so just to give an example with that. All right, let's bring that back and out of your way. Right, the path. A path is the succession of folders that leads to the location of a specific file. For example, the path to a specific file might be D colon backslash. Now, remember, when you're working with paths on your device, it's always going to be a backslash. When you're working with websites, you're going to have a forward slash. Right, so in this example, it's your D drive colon backslash, no spaces in between, documents backslash invoices backslash 2019 backslash, and then we get to the document name over here, example.docx. So I can see there that the name of the document is example, and it is a Word document by its extension over here, file extension, and it is stored under my D drive under documents. Then there's a new folder, invoices. Within that folder, there's a folder called 2019, and then there's my document, which means that the file is in the 2019 folder, in the invoices folder, in the documents folder in the D drive, as I just said over there. All right. The file path is often inserted as a field in the header of a document, a convenient way of indicating to someone where to find a specific file on a computer uh, if all they have is a hard copy. Right. So again, this is quite useful if you're using a multi-user device, such as a server, and you have printed out a document and you're busy collaborating with somebody else. Then that you can have the file path in the head of the documents so that the other person who has the hard copy will be able to go back and find the soft copy on the server. Just an example over there. All right. Information about files. Let's see. Let me show you the path quickly. So let's just minimize here again. Let's bring back my movies and my series of movies and open that up. And let's take this one again. Let's right click and let's get to the properties and just give it a second to open up. And over here, I can see it's C drive, users, NAM, OneDrive, desktop, series, and movies. So that's where it is at the moment. Right, so that is the path over there. That entire piece over there. That's the path. And that's what the computer reads to be able to go and find this video. All right. Let's move that back out of the way. There we go. All right, file property, information about files. The file property, like I just showed you now, the basic information about a file, such as its name, size, and date modified. File attribute, a property of a file that can be set. The most common attributes are the hidden and read-only file attributes, which are discussed below. Okay, so again, I'm just going to open that up, and I'm going to just show you again over here. So properties. Okay, so this gives me my general information, the size, my path, when it was created, when it was last modified, when it was last accessed. Then I've got my attributes at the bottom over here, read only, hidden, um, and then I can unblock a file if I want to as well. And I've got advanced options. This file is ready for archiving and allow this file to have its context indexed in addition to file properties. And then I can also compress it to save disk space. I would not advise going to advanced attributes unless you actually know what you're doing. I'd also leave this alone. But I just want to bring to your attention that if you have received an access database from an external source and it says that it does not want to open it, or that some things have been disabled, what you can do is you can, if you trust the source from where the access database came from, you can close it down, go to the properties of that access database, unblock it, click apply, okay, and then open it up again and it'll allow you to edit. All right, so just a little bit of extra information for you there. All right, so let's see what these are. Read only, a file attribute that includes a file is read only or not. A read only file cannot be modified and saved under the same name within the same folder. All right, so that's, yeah, it's like trying to have two Word documents with the same name. It's just not going to work because even though their formats are slightly different, the naming has to be different as well. Right, hidden, a file attribute that indicates if a file is visible or not. The only difference between a hidden file and a visible file is that a hidden file will be by default not appear in the list of files and folders you see in File Explorer. Some system files are hidden so that they are not accidentally deleted. Some viruses may also cause files to be hidden. So again, if you have um, hidden files in that, you might be able to um, find the show hidden files. No, it's not over here. View. Let's just see over here. There we go. If I check on the hidden items, then it'll display those ones as well for me. But generally, you don't want to do that. They are hidden for a reason. So the only time you would go to that is if you actually went and hit a file or a folder over there. All right. Metadata. Now, we've heard of metadata quite often. Metadata is additional data stored about a file that describes the contents of the file, such as the author and the title of the file. So I'm going to quickly open up an Excel sheet so that we can have a look at that, and I'll take you through that. The information included in the metadata depends on the type of file. For example, a music file might have additional metadata, such as information about the album, artist, genre, and year of the album was released. Let's carry on, yeah. A word processing document would have information about the author and the number of pages. A photo can have all the details of the camera used, the shutter speed, aperture settings, zoom settings, and even the geographical location of where the photo was taken. This additional data is used by specialized software to enable, for example, a search such as the following: list of all photos taken with a Canon 5D MK4 in Mpumalanga in January 2019. You can also see this data in File Explorer by right-clicking on a file and choosing to view its properties. Okay, so in Excel, if I were to open up a new document, just give it a moment to open up over here. All right, so as you saw over there for a moment, it said they're not responding. If it does get stuck like that and it doesn't want to continue, you can always make use of the task manager to go and close it off your Excel. All right, so in an Excel document, I can come to my info and I can get my metadata on the right hand side over there. Okay, just one example. Or again, going back to my other folder, my movies, my series. Okay, and going to my properties over here. If I go to my details, it can give me a lot more information over there um, with regards to it. So you can see who the owner is, the desktop name, they created the path, the type of the item type, the name, and all this other information over here can be added in as well. As you can see, here's the length of it and the title over there. All right, so this is your general. Your details over here will give you more of your metadata. All right, moving on, file manager functions. Besides making it possible for us to organize our files, file managers also provide other functions such as the following. Searching. So file managers such as File Explorer allow you to search for a file based on any number of criteria, such as the file size, type of file, partial file name, date accessed, and even text in the file. File Explorer has a search facility in the top right-hand corner of the window. Right, so let's have a look at that. Let's open up File Explorer again, and let's have a look at the searching option over here. We come to Home, and let's go and look for the search. Let's just try and find it over here quickly. Where's my search over here now? It doesn't have that in the top right hand corner over here. What is this? You see, sometimes they change this around in some of them, but you should have. Come on, you should be able to do a search from here. Just looking for it quickly. Okay, I don't see it at the moment. Um, there we go. The search quick access. Silly me. There we go. Right, from there, the minute I click on that, I go to my search over here. It gives me all the extra options that I have. So I can look in my current folder, I can look in all my subfolders. I got my options for dates modified. I got the type of folder that I'm looking for. All right, I can have a look at the size. I can go and have a look at other properties. So the path, folder path, the name, tags, or the file extension. And then I've got advanced options over here. So system files, where do I want to go look for things in file contents? I want to look in zips, compressed folders. So there are quite a few options over here. You can even go to this PC and go look from there. Alrighty, so that is all your search options over there. So we're going to close that off. So as you're searching. Compressing, this refers to the process of reducing the file size of a file by producing a smaller compressed version of the file. This is also often referred to as zipping. Windows provides the ability to create compressed versions of files to save space. So again, let me do a demonstration for you over here. Let me just open up my um, File Explorer, and let's just go onto my desktop, and let's take my moving series. So if I left click and then right click, it should give me the option to zip it. Let's have a look over here. Shred, no. Give access, no. Print to start. All right, let's go into here and let's go see if I can quickly zip something else. All right. No, for some other reason, it's not giving me access to that at the moment. But you can download software to give you the ability to zip your folders. All right. Decompressing. This refers to the process of converting or extracting a compressed or zip set of files back to their original size or uncompressed format so that they can be used. Right, so generally with zipping folders, most people make use of WinRAR or WinZip. There's also 7-zip. So those are third-party applications that you can use to zip your folders. Uh, Windows does have a built-in option to unzip folders for you, so that you can uh, work within those files and folders and things. Right, on the right-hand side, they say compressing files was not much more important in the past when storage space was limited, especially portable storage, and when data communication was slower and more expensive. Right, but due to the size of our images and our photos nowadays, because of the amount of pixels in our cameras, is making the files strong, larger in size, as well as the video has been larger. Sometimes it is necessary to compress um, the documents to be able to effectively send them electronically somewhere else, or even just for the purpose of storing space. All right. And they say at the bottom of here, it is sometimes necessary to convert files from one format to another. Examples include converting a graphic file from a BMP to a JPG format, or saving a Word document in a lower or different format. It is often done to allow users who are using different applications to access the data. For example, plain text files can be opened in a whole range of applications on a number of different operating systems. We refer to this process as importing or exporting. Right, exporting, saving data in a format that can be read by different versions of the same application or even a totally different application. Sometimes the menu option for this is export, and sometimes it is just an option under save under. I have spoken about this before. Making use of the export option is literally just an extra click away. And if you were to go to the save as, it will give you all the same options plus more for you to choose from. Importing, opening or reading data created in a different version of the same application or even a totally different application. Sometimes all files that the application can handle are listed in the open dialog box, and other file formats are automatically imported when opened. Sometimes you have to find and use the import menu option. It all depends on the application you are using. So let's try open up Excel again, just to give you an example over here. So let's go and open up our Excel and give it a second. While we're doing that, let's go down. Okay, scheduling is next. Let's just see how far my Excel is. There we go. All right. So let's quickly go to open up a new workbook. Let's maximize that so we can see it easily. Let's go to File. Now there is the export option over here. You can create a PDF file, or you can change the file type, and it gives you a couple of different options over here. But all these file types over here, including the PDF option, is right here under Save As. And if you click on the Excel workbook, you'll see all those different options over here. So personally, I would say just go and use the Save As and then select your option over there that you want to. Say, for instance, PDF, which is generally a universal um, format that pretty much every operating system can read, as long as they have a PDF reader installed, such as Adobe, for instance. Alrighty, so there's just an example over there. So that's importing and exporting. Also, another form of exporting is saving your document to an older version for older devices running on older software. And importing, you could perhaps get a document from an older version. Let's take it a 2010 Microsoft Office version, sent to you will open in compatibility mode. And then you can go ahead and you can save it as the latest version of the operating system. So that would be your Office 365 or 2019, depending on what you have loaded. Right, moving on to scheduling. A scheduler is a program that is used to run certain programs at specific times. You can, for example, set a backup program to run every night at midnight. Many programs, including Windows operating systems and most security software, such as antivirus software, have their own built in scheduling options and settings. If you choose not to change any of these, the default will apply. So, for example, Windows monitors when you're generally busy on your computer, and it gets an estimate of when you generally at your computer and it schedules the update installations outside of your general usage time. Or you can specifically go and say, listen, only install the updates at 11 o'clock at night if you want to. So if you go with the defaults, it will pick a time itself. Otherwise, you can specify a specific time for that. So, reasons why schedulers are useful are the following. Schedulers automatically check for updates so that we don't forget to check for updates for critical applications like our antivirus software. You'll see a lot of software that has automatic updates in it. Office 365, your operating system, Windows, things like your browsers, your Chrome browser or your Edge browser might sometimes automatically update. Um, WhatsApp for your desktop will automatically update before it opens up. So there's a lot of them that have the built-in scheduling into them, right? Just to make sure that it is still operating effectively, because updates are generally quite important. One, it improves usability and functionality. It installs the latest features, and it also repairs any possible bugs that might be inside there. So having that scheduled on a regular basis is quite important. Right, schedulers can be set to automatically perform certain routine housekeeping tasks, such as disk defragmentation, again, so that we don't have to remember to do this ourselves. Yes, this is quite an important thing, especially with the disk defragmentation, and I'll explain that later, because it can be quite a time-consuming um, process, so you might want to have that running while you're sleeping. So when you wake up tomorrow morning, it's all done and your device is ready to go. We can set schedules to run at off-peak times, even when we are not at our computer. Two advantages of this are that they do not slow down our computers while we are working, and they can be scheduled to run when internet access is not as slow. Just a little note that if you do schedule things to run at off-peak times, just ensure that your device is still on, powered on, so that the schedule can run. Okay, I know it might sound obvious, but just want to bring that to your attention. On the right hand side, let's say today you generally do not get separate scheduling software. Backup apps and other software include their own built-in scheduler that you use to tell the app when to do its tasks. So you'll basically just go into the application, set your schedule, and then just leave it to run automatically. Okay. A little tip: save internet cap and time with updates. In situations where you need to update several computers, such as in the case of a network, it is often a good idea to download the files needed to update your software to a central location. This saves the time and costs of using your internet cap to download the updates for each separate computer. This is particularly true for security software such as antivirus programs, which need to be updated frequently to remain active. So from there, it would be best if you had a central computer, just have the one updated, and that will, by default, protect all the other devices that are connected to that server directly. Alrighty. Printer management. This is a particularly important concept in network environments where users have the option of printing to several possible printers. In grade 10, you learned that you can set a printer as a default printer. In other words, the one you normally want to use unless you choose otherwise. We also introduced the concept of printer queues. So by choosing a default printer, so that's the one that it will automatically choose and that will come up first, and that the print job will automatically go to. Just make sure that that printer is on and connected to your device to be able to use it. So when we print a document to any other type of file, it becomes a print job. These print jobs or tasks are temporarily sent to disk until the printer is available to print them. This process of sending the print task to disk is known as spooling. So it's basically like pulling them up, but just spooling. Each printer has its own area on disk, known as a printer queue, where the files containing the printer tasks wait in the queue to be printed. So you could choose multiple documents, and you could set them up to be printed without having to wait for the previous ones to be finished. And what it'll do is it will add it to the queue. So the first one sent to be printed will be first in the queue, and the last one sent to be printed will obviously be the last in the queue. So you can view the printer queue by double clicking on the relevant printer icon. So if you were to open up your or go to your task manager, your taskbar at the bottom, while you're printing, you'll actually see a printing icon towards the right hand side. You can double click on that and that'll open up your printing queue, and you can see which documents are currently being printed and which ones are still in the queue to be printed, as well as the name of the document and the size of the document as well. Right. Viewing the printer queue allows you to see information about the documents waiting to print, such as the status of the printing, the owner of the document, and the number of pages. You can also manage the queues by deleting tasks, pausing tasks, or restarting tasks. So sometimes they'll get stuck and they won't go through to print. You can always delete it, or if you accidentally started a print that you didn't want to start, you can stop that print before it finishes off. Okay. Moving on to backup. Backing up files has always been a crucial part of computer management. It has become more complex because the vast number and different sizes of files we store. Because of the different sizes of files we store. Just think of the huge number of photos we take and store. There are many reasons why our files need to be backed up, including the fact that files can be accidentally overwritten or deleted. Hardware failures such as disk drive crashes can occur. Devices can be stolen, along with the data and files stored on them. If they're not backed up, then they're just gone. Disasters such as fires, earthquakes, and floods can destroy hardware. Files can be corrupted by power fluctuations. Files can be deleted, encrypted, or corrupted by viruses, etc. All right. So, how do we do backups? Well, you can do it manually by just moving all the folders onto an external device or into a cloud storage device. But the more economical, faster, and better way to do it is to make use of backup software. It is important to have a formal, structured backup procedure and policy in place, especially in network environments. You need to keep track of what you have backed up and when you last performed a backup. Most operating systems, including Windows, provide backup utilities. Other third party vendors, example not Microsoft, also have specialized backup programs. These dedicated backup programs have the advantages of allowing you to schedule when to back up the files. Again, you can do that when you are away from your device, just ensuring that it is powered on. It is usually best to do so at night when no one is working on the files and there are no files open which may not be backed up. So if you leave a Word document or an Excel document or any sort of document open, um, it unfortunately cannot back it up because the operating system is currently making use of it. Choose to do a full backup of all the files or just those that have been changed since the last backup. Encrypt backups to prevent unauthorized access. Compress the files to save space on the backup media. Again, that comes to compressing your software, either through your properties, um, on your for your individual files, or making use of compression software such as zipping software. Right, tips, backup tips. Here are some tips to make your life a bit easier when it comes to backing up your system. Use software that automatically manages your backup process so that backing up is not a task that you have to do manually. This is the best way to ensure that backups are made regularly. Only back up your data, as the programs themselves can be reinstalled if necessary. Back up your files onto external portable media, such as a portable hard drive. Do not leave your backup drive permanently connected to your computer. Malware such as ransomware, which encrypts the data on your computer, will also encrypt data on any connected drive. This makes your backup useless. Keep the backups offsite in case of theft or a disaster such as a fire. If you do need to keep them in on your premises, then I'd recommend you getting yourself a fireproof box for that. Right. You can also back up to multiple places. So you can back up to an external device, and you can also back up to a cloud storage, which is generally a good idea to have your backups in two different places, so that if something were to happen to your physical external hard drive, be it corrupted or stolen or whatever the case may be, you still have a cloud storage as well. Unfortunately, with the cloud storage backups, you may have to pay a monthly fee if you exceed the free maximum that most of them provide, which is generally between 1 and 2 gigs. Some places allow up to 15 gigs, for example, Google. All right, so that is your backups. Another reason why backups are so great is because we work with multiple files and folders on a daily basis on our devices. We don't always remember what changes we've done to which files. We don't know which ones extra we've created, which ones we've deleted. We can't keep track of everything that we do on the computer. So the backup software actually assists with that in looking through the um, backed up software and then looking through your device and actually finding the differences and then comparing them and then backing up the latest versions for you. So there's just an example over there of why backup software is beneficial. All right, consider the option of using a cloud backup service such as Carbonite, not just online storage such as Dropbox, OneDrive, etc., as an additional backup. Perform regular housekeeping so that you do not have multiple copies or different versions of the same files. So, for example, your CV. You don't have your CV in your personal folder and on your desktop and in your documents on its own. So, go look for multiple copies on a regular basis and review them. And if they are all identical, move the ones from the locations that you do not require them and just keep your main copy in the desired folder. Consider archiving large files that you don't often use by moving them from your computer to another storage medium. So, archiving files is basically when we keep files that we will still need sometime in the future that we need to refer back to, but not files that we will access on a regular basis. It could be your diploma, and you'll only access that when you are applying for a position. It could be a medical report, and you will only access that if you have to go to the doctor again, for instance. So, or you could have all your certificates archived because you're not going to be looking at them on a very regular basis. So check that the backups are actually working by restoring some of the files from the backups from time to time. So what you want to do is when you've backed up your data, try and download that file again or try and copy it back over onto your device and open that file just to make sure that it is still working properly and that still has full functionality. Alrighty, because it can happen from time to time that a document or a file could get corrupted by one or other means. Right, moving on to security tools. The fact that there are threats to user data and the consequent need for security measures has made it necessary for the operating system itself to be adapted to include security measures and facilities to help prevent the spread of malware, as the majority of threats apply to Windows, and most of us probably use Windows. We'll look at some of the features that have been built into recent versions of Windows to enhance computer security. Right, we have access control. For malware to work, it first has to be installed on your computer. Access control means that the operating system specifically asks for your permission before any software can be installed. So you'll see a lot of times when you download an application, the exe file, not the ones from your Microsoft Store, it will ask you, do you want to run this program? Yes, no. If you trust the where the exe file came from, then you'll say yes, and it'll start the installation for you. If you say no, it will stop it, and it won't go any further. Right. The purpose of access control is to try to make it impossible for malware to be installed on your computer without your knowledge. If you're asked whether a program should be installed and you did not specifically start the installation yourself, then you should refuse permission. And who knows, you might have stopped some malware in its tracks. Again, if you see something suddenly pop up and say install this, do not click on that. Right. Now, this is why your day to day account should never be an administrator level account. As a normal user, you have access to few of the system's important and secure files. Any attempt to access or change these files will force access control to ask for your permission, which will make sure you know what is happening on your computer. All right. So that is your access control. And you can get third party applications to facilitate and assist you with that to further prevent malware and viruses from getting onto your system. Right, firewalls. Before we read that, let's see what it says on the side here. It doesn't matter how good your access control and firewall are if you or your users are not aware of the dangers of social engineering. Most hacks, data loss, and other malware problems first get into your computer through some sort of social engineering attack. So let's look at that. The firewall. Firewall is very, very crucial. That is basically your first line of defense. A firewall acts as a barrier between your computer and the internet. It checks which programs are trying to access your computer via the internet or are trying to access the internet from your computer. It can consist of hardware or software or a combination of both. So every time you open up your browser, okay, and you're trying to access the internet, it has to go through your firewall first. And every URL that you try and open up, that has to go through your firewall and it has to be verified as safe by the firewall. Obviously, there are some things that will still slip through, and if the firewall deems it to be unsafe, it will give you a warning and it will also give you the option to still continue to there. But if something happens, then it's at your own risk. All right. So firewall software is built into most operating systems. You may find yourself being asked if an application should be granted access to the internet, especially with some updates in that. So it's basically a permission that you give it. If you answer yes, then the application can connect. This gives you an opportunity to prevent applications that you did not know, that you don't know, or trust from connecting to the internet. Again, you should not install applications that you don't trust. And if you see an application there and you're unsure, um, find somebody who is knowledgeable in software and ask them if that is a reliable or a suspicious application, whether it's required, and if it can be removed. And they might be able to assist you with that. Third party firewalls, such as those included in antivirus software packages, offer more functionality, but for most users, the firewall that comes included with the operating system provides adequate protection. Again, this is where updates are very important and scheduling your updates, especially for your Windows, because that includes firewall protection, malware protection, basic antivirus protection comes in those updates as well. Hardware firewalls can be standalone hardware devices and are normally used on a network as they can protect all the computers on the network. So I just want to show you a firewall device. So let's open up my Google over here, and it's a firewall device. All right, and let's just have a look at some of them. Let's go to the images. So these are called firewall devices. Now, a lot of switches have a firewall built into them as well. All right, so that comes with firewall and your switch at the same time. So this is the hardware version of it, and then you still have the operating system um, inside there for the firewall to be able to work. All right, just an example over there. Even your router, your internet router, generally have firewalls built into them as well. All right, security, updates, and security is a section under Windows settings where you can check various aspects relating to the security and health of your device. You can also find recommendations on actions you need to take in response to any warning messages you may receive. You can set and check settings for the following, among others: your firewall, your Windows automatic updates, anti-malware to control viruses and spyware. As you can see, system security is important, and the operating system has been adapted to make sure you are aware of its importance and to provide you with tools that help you to keep your system secure. Before I show you that, see on the side here, always set your operating system and security apps to update automatically. Updated software also carries a lower risk of malware infection. So as I said before, the updates allow for um, protection against that. So I'm going to open up my settings quickly. All right, let's go to my update and security. And just to give you an example, under my Windows updates, just let it load you quick. You'll see that it'll come up and it'll tell me that I have 2 updates pending. Okay, as soon as it decides to work with me over here, again, I have a couple of applications open, so that is slowing down my RAM, my processing speed. So we just have to give it a moment over here. All right, so there we go. So your device is missing important security and quality fixes. And there's the 2 of them, and I can schedule a restart. I can restart now. Says that I can do Windows 11, so I can install that as well. And then there's other options over here. So I can see my update history, advanced options. And then as usual, there's always a little bit of help over there. But yes, so that's where you can get your security. That's where your security is for your Windows. All righty. Right. Now moving on to factors influencing performance. The 3 most crucial hardware components in terms of performance are generally memory, so that's your RAM, the processor, and the hard drive. Let's look at these and some other general factors that can influence the overall performance of a computer system. So your memory, RAM, again, I'm going to mention that's random access memory. Remember that any programs and data that need to be run or processed need first to be loaded from disk to from your hard drive or your solid state, or even from your external into your RAM, your memory. Also remember that you don't have all the installed memory available to you, since parts of the operating system and other programs such as antivirus software stay in the memory all the time. So as our operating systems and our applications and apps on our devices have become bigger and more intricate and more complicated, they're taking up more RAM to be able to use them to function. So therefore, having more RAM is always a better option. You'll see with most applications and even operating systems, it will give you a minimum RAM requirement to be able to operate, not necessarily efficiently, but it will operate, and then it will give you a preferred amount of RAM so that it can operate comfortably. Now, obviously, when you're doing that, you want to make sure that you always have a little bit extra for the other applications that will be running as well at the same time. So if the memory is full, parts of the data or programs that the computer is not currently busy with are temporarily stored in an area on the hard disk. These have to be loaded back into memory again when they are needed. This slows down the computer as accessing the disk is very slow compared to accessing the memory. Therefore, the number of applications or programs running in memory affects the overall performance of the computer. If you do a lot of multitasking, and who doesn't today? I mean, we always have multiple apps open at the same time. Then the more memory you have available, the better, as more data and programs can be loaded into memory for processing. Right. So, for example, um, an application or an operating system might say that it needs a minimum of 4 gigs of RAM, but it would prefer 8 gigs of RAM. So you might want to load at least 8 gigs of RAM, preferably 16 gigs of RAM, to prevent it from filling up very quickly. Okay. Just to give you an example of RAM, again, let me just show you that quickly. So RAM, uh, hardware, and I'm not going to go into the details of RAM. I just want to show you a couple images of what RAM looks like. All right, so this is your general RAM. That is for laptops. It is shorter, and this is for standard desktops over here. All right, so that's your memory. Just remember that there is a difference between memory and storage. Memory is your RAM, that is your temporary storage, and storage is your hard drive. Okay. Caching. Now, we've all heard of caching before. In Module 2.3 on e-communications, we learned that web pages that have been recently accessed are stored locally on the hard drive so that they are retrieved more quickly the next time they are needed. This is known as web caching. Special high-speed memory called cache memory helps improve the overall performance of the computer. How does it work? Imagine a librarian, let's call her Mrs. Windows, in a library placing the books that are most often used in a special shelf. We'll call that the cache memory. This makes it a lot quicker and easier for everyone to access these frequently used books. If the book was not found in the special shelf, the cache memory, then it would take a bit longer to locate and retrieve it from some other shelf, the normal memory. Obviously, you can't put every book in the library on this special shelf. That would defeat the object, faster access. If the librarian, Mrs. Windows, the operating system, notices that another book not currently on the special shelf is being used frequently, she can swap it with one of the books on the special shelf, the cache memory, that isn't used so often. So basically, you'll also notice that if you open up a document or a audio file or a video that you haven't used in a while, you'll see that it'll take a little bit longer for that to open and to load. Um, for example, when you first open up Excel, the first time after either starting up your device or restarting it, then it will take a little bit longer to open compared to the second or third time that you open it before shutting down again, because it has now been cached, because that is a recently and in this instance a frequently used application. Just an example over there. In a similar way, cache memory is built into various components on a computer, including the CPU. Again, that's the central processing unit. It keeps frequently or recently accessed data based on the assumption that it will probably be accessed again soon. Cache memory is more expensive because it is faster than normal memory, but it can increase the overall performance of a computer quite dramatically. All right, so we have cache memory within our CPUs and that, so it stores the information there. The CPU, central processing unit, right, let's look at that. That is that chip inside of your computer. So, wait, let's have a look at a CPU. So, CPU uh, images. Right. Let's have a look at them. So let's just go to all the images. Right. You'll see in any desktop or any laptop or any device, you have a CPU. It has a whole bunch of pins that connected to the motherboard and the RAM, and it connected to the RAM as well. Right. So that's your CPU. Very, very delicate piece of hardware over there. Basically, the brains of your system. All right. The CPU is measured in gigahertz. In general, the higher the speed of the CPU, the faster it will perform. However, there are many other factors that come into play. So we cannot guarantee that a CPU with a higher speed rating in gigahertz will necessarily always perform better than a CPU with a slower speed rating. So when you're looking at buying a laptop or a desktop in that, it'll say the CPU runs at 1.3 gigahertz or 2.4 gigahertz, depending on what you're buying. Basically, a gigahertz says that it allows for 1,000 operations per second. So the higher the gigahertz, the more operations that it can do simultaneously. All right. So that is one of the things, but not the only thing that you look at when looking at CPUs. You also want to look at the number of cores. So the more than one physical processor can be included in a single chip. For example, dual core, which is 2 cores, quad core, 4, hexa-core, 6 cores, octa-core, 8 cores. So the latest versions, your i3s, i5s, i7s, i9s, that's all telling me about the type of cores and processing that the CPU can do. Right. So a lot of times with a lot of computers, you'll get a dual core or a quad core most often. Your higher end devices, like your gaming computers or your graphic intensive computers, might have a hexa-core or a octa-core, right? All the way up to 32 cores as of 2018. I'm not sure if there are any more extra cores, but I think it is still 32 cores. So each core is a complete processor that can work independently of any other core on the CPU chip. More cores make the computer perform better, especially when running multiple tasks. So let's take, for example, I have a dual core and I'm running at 1.5 gigahertz. So that means each core can do 1,500 processes per second. So you see that you've really doubled your processing speed. Your quad core will obviously allow it to do 4 times that processing speed. All right, your cache size, as discussed earlier, cache memory is a type of special high-speed memory used for recently or frequently accessed data. The larger the cache memory on the CPU, the faster the CPU will perform, as the cache memory will then contain more data and access to cache memory is much faster than access to ordinary memory. So what they're saying there is that your cache memory, which temporarily holds onto your frequently opened applications and files and folders, is a lot faster than trying to retrieve the information from your hard drive. All right. In modern computers, the CPU is not the only part of the computer that does the work. If you play high-end games, it matters less how powerful your CPU is or how much RAM you have. What you really need is a video card with a powerful GPU, a graphics processing unit, to improve performance or even play the game at all. Now, with Intel, you can have your standard user interface, but for graphic intensive games, you might find that your game gets stuck. So that is why most gaming computers generally have a separate graphics card installed in them. I can have a look over here and see if I maybe have that on my device. Just give me a second here. Let me quickly have a look. Let's go to our system. All right, and we'll let the system open up while we're waiting for that. There we go. Right. Some software, such as CAD, 3D design, 3D graphics, etc., also use the GPU for doing complex mathematical calculations. Having a GPU for this type of software improves your computer's performance to a noticeable degree. All right, so let's have a look at the settings over here. So you can see that I have 8 gigs of RAM. Here's my processor. In this instance, I have an AMD. I have a built-in graphics card, 2 gigs, and then my storage over there. So that's my storage, where that's my hard drive, my storage, and this is my memory, my RAM. Right. This is my CPU. All right, and this is my graphics card that I have over here. Okay. The hard drive or the solid state drive. Your hard drive is the permanent home for all your data and programs. Anything that needs to be processed needs to be loaded from the disk into memory. Changes to files need to be written back to disk if you do not want to lose those changes. It therefore makes sense that a faster hard drive can improve the overall performance of a computer system. Now, in general, you had your hard drives that ran at different speeds, uh, which made some of them faster than others. And then your solid state drive came in, which made it remarkably faster to write information to your drive, but it also came at an exceptionally higher price range as well. So your electronic storage, SSDs, solid state drives, have no moving parts and are thus much faster, very much faster than magnetic hard drives. They are also more expensive than hard drives, and they improve the overall speed of your computer more than any type of upgrade. So you can increase your RAM as much as what you want. You can increase your cores. You can get a faster CPU, but it will still only be able to perform as fast as what your hard drive can read the information. All right. In fact, many new laptops only have solid state drives, and many computers have both types of storage. A small SSD is used to install your operating system and apps on so that they will load and run faster, whilst a larger hard drive is used for data. Now, that is primarily on desktops, but you could do the same with your laptop, where you could have a solid state drive installed. You have your operating system and all your applications on there, and then you have an external standard hard drive with all your files and your folders stored on that. The more you use your computer, the more the files and parts of files get scattered on the disk. The more scattered the file parts are, the slower your computer becomes, as the files take longer to retrieve. This is known as disk defragmentation. So going back to disk defragmentation that we discussed earlier, and that again is found under your Windows administrative tools. It is best to run that on a regular basis when you are away from the computer, and just uh, keep in mind that it is a lengthy process. The more information that is stored on that hard drive, the longer it is going to take to defragment and basically get all the scattered pieces back into one part of the hard drive. Think of it as taking a bag of marbles, for instance, and you open up the bag and turn it upside down, and the marbles will scatter across the floor. Now you need to go and you need to find all those marbles and move them back into one heap, and that's basically what your disk defragmentation does with your files and your folders. Right. SSDs can also get fragmented, but because they are electronic rather than magnetic, fragmentation has virtually no effect on their speed. All right. So if you have a solid state drive and you try and defragment it, it's going to say to you that it is not required. Right. Influence of malware. Malware can slow down your computer by using resources such as free memory and hard drive space. In addition, spyware can slow down your internet connection if it frequently connects to the internet without your knowledge, of course. Your computer also can also become part of a botnet. For example, it's turned into a zombie without your knowledge. This slows down your computer. So what they're saying there is that if you get malware or let's take malware onto your computer. Let's say there is malware for crypto mining, and somebody gets it installed onto your device or gets onto your device somehow. It can use up the resources, the RAM, the CPU, and all that to mine for the crypto without you even being aware of that. And you wouldn't know except by the performance of your device. All right. So if something slows down quite frequently, if your device is slowing down and it seems to be sluggish, run malware software, run antivirus software, and look at your firewall settings. If you're not sure how to do that, you can always get a IT professional to assist you with that. Troubleshooting using utility software. Here are a few tips on how to use operating system utilities to solve common problems. Disk scanning. Do not try to repair a suspected faulty hard drive unless you are sure you know how to do it. However, you can often fix problems on flash drives quite easily by running a disk scanner. This is a utility that comes included with all operating systems. It can be used to check a drive for errors and bad sectors and try to fix them. So, depending on how you set your device up, you could set it up that every time you plug in an external device, such as a flash drive or an external hard drive, it will first scan it to make sure one, that it is operating properly, and two, to ensure that there's no malware, spyware, or viruses on it. All right, disk defragmentation. A disk defragmenter is a software utility that reorganizes parts of its files and speeds your computer up. Note that defragmentation does not free up disk space. It simply rearranges the files parts so they can be opened more quickly. For most people, the standard version supplied in Windows should be sufficient to keep their computers in good condition. So, to give you another example of defragmentation, let's say um, you have a 100-page book, but the pages are laying all over the place. Now you need to first go and pick up all those pages, rearrange them back into order, and then put that pile down on the desk. Now that's basically what the disk defragmenter does with your files and your folders. It goes and looks for all the little bits and pieces and moves them all into one central location for quicker access. Because if you don't do that, what happens is when you try and access a file or a folder, it now needs to go and scan the entire hard drive, looking for all the little bits and pieces, the fragments, um, in order to be able to open it up and to run that application. All right. Although later versions of Windows perform hard drive defragmentation on a schedule automatically, it is also possible to use the Windows Task Scheduler to set your own schedule when to run a defrag operation. It is best to run this at night when you are not using the computer because it is a fairly time consuming process and access to the hard drive can be slowed down while the disk is being defragmented. It is also just advisable not to have other applications open or to be using the device while you're defragmenting. Okay. Lastly, disk filling up. With the increasing use of media files such as photos, music, and movies, most people find themselves running out of storage space sooner or later. So, in the past, um, computers and laptops used to come out with 256 gigs of hardware, of hard drive space, sometimes even 128 gigs, and that used to be sufficient. Then it became necessary for 500 gigs, and then a 1 terabyte. Some devices even have up to 2 terabytes inside of them, depending on what they making using the storage for. Even your external devices nowadays generally come in a 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, 4 terabyte, or larger. All right. Windows provides a very useful utility, namely disk cleanup, which can make more storage space available by removing temporary files downloaded from the internet and temporary files created by Windows. It can also be used to remove installed programs that you no longer or seldom use. This cleanup will present you with a list of all the different types of files that can be deleted in order to increase the amount of disk space. So let me quickly bring up the disk cleanup just to give you a demonstration over here. Disk clean. All right, let me quickly open up that over there just to show you what is available. And I would recommend that you do a disk cleanup first, and then you go ahead and you do a defrag. So as you can see over there, this cleanup is calculating how much space you will be able to free on Windows. This may take a few minutes to complete, and there we go. So at the moment, I can clear 42.9 megabytes, but I can also come here and I can say clean up system files. So what that's going to do is it's going to go and run through the system files as well, and it's going to come back with a new list of possible things to clean up. So you can check and uncheck different things that you want to have deleted and cleaned up, and you can work your way through this list. So I'm going to quickly do the cleanup system files, and I'll just pause while I'm waiting for that, and I'll show you the difference afterwards. Alrighty, so there we go. So I did the additional cleanup option, and you can see that it's now jumped to 216 megabytes. All right, so I have my antivirus. I've got temporary files inside there. I've got temporary internet files over here, and a whole bunch of other things that are available that I can delete. You can see over here, there's a whole lot of temporary files that could be most likely Windows temporary files that is stored that are not necessary to keep on that. So if you want to get rid of all of them, you simply just go OK. It's going to say to you, are you sure you want to permanently delete these files? Now remember, these are all temporary. Also, just remember in your recycle bin, make sure that there's nothing in your recycle bin that you might want to still keep. If you're happy with all of that and you've selected all of them, simply say delete files. Okay, and it'll go ahead and it'll clean it up for you. And when it's done, you'll have a little bit more space on your device. All right, so once it's done, it'll simply close down. And if you go check your hard drive, you'll see that you'll have that little bit of space available over there. Right, well, that is it for this video. I will see you in the next one.